Hello friends, welcome to the TechBizSoft. So as polymorphism topic is going on, right? So we are continuing the same today also. So we have seen like type of polymorphism, what is the polymorphism in the last session, right? So we have seen what is the overloading, what is the overriding, right? So we have seen right if overloading, if the same class is having a multiple method with the same name, right, then argument will be the different, then it is comes under overloading category, right? Overriding will say, right, if it is defined into multiple classes, right, that should be connected by the inheritance, then it is called overriding. Both we have covered, right? Overloading and overriding. Okay, now we are going to understand some more scenario of the overriding. Like we have seen, right, there is one constructor which cannot be overridden. I can't override the constructor. Same thing, there is a two type of method also that cannot be overridden, static and final. So first we have to understand what are the static and final, then why it is not overriding, that also we will look on it. Okay, so let's look first static method. What are the static actually? So static is a one keyword, right? Static is a one kind of keyword, right? So we have seen total many keywords we have, right? So it's a one kind of keywords which is used to make a variable, right, or method, variable or method, right, which is used to make a variable or method independent from the object. That means from the object. So if I'm making static, so static could be a variable and method, and one more scenario we have like static look like class also. Okay, variable, methods and class. So static could be variable, method and class, right? So we have these three things in the static, right? So let's understand what is a static, why do we use it, right? Normally whenever I do create a method, right, let me give one example. So we have seen one example where we have created multiple methods, right? So let me go and create a one method here. Okay, let me create a one method in the single class, same class. Okay, which could be say like void test. Okay, I created a one method, void void test. So this method we have to call, right? How can we call this method? So I have to create a one main method, right? So we know that main method only does help you to call the method, right? So you can see here I'm getting that executor, but here I'm not getting because test method cannot be executed directly. Why? Test method is depending on the object, right? We have to call the object, create the object, then all it will be execute, right? So I'm writing here what I will write the class name static example st equal to say like new static example, right? Static example st equal to new static example. I created one object, and with this object what I will do, I will call the method that could be st.test, right? Same like I may create a one more method called static method. So here I'm writing like static void say like test1. I have two method in the class right now. One is a static method and second one is a non-static method, right? So which one? Non-static we have called through the object. So first we have created the object, right, and then only it is calling. If you want to call the static method, I can directly call. That means I don't have to create any object for static method. So static method are the method which can be called directly, right, if it is a same class. Like for example here I am writing this in a static example only, right, static method. Suppose if it is in a different class, let's say if I am writing here this static method in a different class, let's say I created like that could be say like my static, something like that. Okay, my static. So inside the my static I am writing a one more method that could be also static. So let's say static void say like test2. Okay, now I have one static method here in the my static class. I have to call this test2 also. Then what I will do here, how can I call? So this time I can't call test2 directly. If I will call it, it will give me compile time error. Then it will give me option. We can import it, right? Because it is a part of different class. It is not a part of this class, right? So you can see after import, it is directly giving me access. So here you can see it is importing static, right? So we have a static import and we have a direct also, we can call it through the class name. So if it is a different class, right, first we have to import static, right? Static import is also used for the static method, right? We will understand what is the import if you do not know later on. Right now you have to understand that if it is a import, then we can call directly. If it is not import, right, then what we can do? If it is not import, then I can call directly by the class name. So what is the class name we have? My static dot test2. So static method can be called by directly if it is in the same class. If it is in a different class, I can call directly by the class name. Or third way we have, I can call with the import. So if you want to call test2 here, right, we will write test2. If you want to call that, we have to use static import. So we have a three way to call the static method, either with the static import or by the class name if it is in a different class, and third way we have like if it is in the same class, we can call them directly. We may have a static variable also, right? Let me have one with static variable, say like static static int of x. Okay, let me keep it some value here, right? Static int x equal to 10. So that is a variable called static here, x equal to 10. Now if you want to access it, right, what will I do? I will create one sys out here. Okay, you can directly access it. You can directly access it, system dot out dot println, and you can directly access this x. Now if I'm creating one non-static variable, suppose I'm writing here int of y, and here I'm putting 20, right? And if you want to access that y here, see what it will happen. System dot out dot println. If I will access the y, it will not allow me to access it. Why? Because y is a non-static and x is a static. So if you want to access non-static, right, because here method is a static actually, so non-static variable cannot be accessed directly to the static method, where static can be accessed directly, right? So if you want to access non-static variable, right, like y into a static method, we have to access that through the object only. So then what I will do here, I have to call it in the after object only, and here I will write st.y, st.y, right? So st is example of my static example only, right? Then it will be worked like that. So always remember that if you are going to access non-static variable under the static method, right, and if you will access directly, right, it is an interview questions actually. It is an interview questions, will it work or not? So you have to remember that it will not work. The reason is that this by is a non-static, and here I am accessing that directly in the static method, right? Inside the non-static method, I can use them directly. Like for example here is system dot out dot println, and if I want to access the y, I can access it directly. So here non-static method we have, and non-static variable we have, and non-static method also. So non-static variable can be accessed directly inside the non-static method, right? And then it will directly give me a value, right? So but if you want to access that, see here I'm accessing y directly, but here I'm not accessing y directly. It is giving me an error. The reason, here it is accessing through the in a static non-static method. Here I'm accessing in the static method. So non-static, there is a rule actually. Okay, let me keep it. Let me note down that. Okay, yeah, you can also remember that the rule for static and non-static. Rule for static. What is the static rule? First, static variable Okay, it's an important part. Okay, static variable can be accessible under static method and non-static method. Non-static method, right? So if you will keep what static variable, right? Static variable can be accessible under the static method and non-static method, right? Whereas second rule is what? Non-static variable, right? Non-static variable, it will be accessible only inside non-static method, right? So non-static variable, it will be accessible only inside non-static method directly. Directly means no object creation is required, right? But if you want to access, where? But if you want to access under static method, right? Then we have to create. So if you want to access under the static method, so we have to create object of it. We have to create object of it. Okay, so there is one reason actually why non-static cannot be accessible under the static method. The reason is that, let me repeat it once again. So static method will be load at first and non-static will load at later. Later means it depend on the objects. If object will create, then only it will load. If no object will create, it will not load, right? So whenever it is loading later, right, and static is loading early, right, that means it will not initialize the value. So that will be an error actually. That could be an issue for the JVM, right? So that's why it will say that, because static is going to initialize at the time of loading of the class only, right? And non-static is going to initialize when do we create object. So let's say if I do not create this object, right, that time y cannot be initialized, because y is a non-static which will directly depend on to the object only, right? If no object, that means it will not be initialized, right? So that is a way, that's the reason we cannot access. I mean, it will initialize but cannot be used. So that is a way we cannot use that non-static variable under the static method. Clear it? So static variable can be accessible under the, like here, if you want to access, right? Let me give this also, out dot println. If you want to access your x, right, we can access it, no problem, because we know that x is loaded at before the before calling this test method, right? So if it is already loaded, then there is no problem, it can be called directly, right? But if it is not loaded, then it will be a problem and it will not be allowed to access it. So static will be something which could be directly execute at the time of loading the class itself. A non-static is something which is depend on the class. We can create a static class also. Always remember that a static class could be nested class. A static class cannot be a normal class, right? So I can create a static class also. So what could be the static class, right? That could be only nested class. Nested means class inside the class, right? If I will create class inside the class, that class can be static class, but normal class cannot be static. Like for example, if I will add here a static, right? Like for example, before this static, it will be a compile time error and it will say that a static cannot be applicable with the class, right? Then it is saying that make static example non-static, because it is not possible. But if you want to create class inside the class, then it could be possible. Like for example, it is a closing of that, right? I am creating here one more class, say static void. No, void is not required. Static class, say like inner, something like that. So this class, inner class, can be static, but outer class cannot be static. So here I can't keep static like that. Okay, so this is the difference between static and non-static. You have to understand that. Simple definition you can remember: static is something which is depend on the class, non-static is something which is depend on the object. That way you can recall it, right? And static, if I will create n number of objects, let's say I created one object here, right, like this one. If I will create one more object, let's say if I create one more object here, that time it is st and it is st1, right? So this time let me access here with st dot y, right? So for this st it will make a different copy, and for st1 it will make a different copy. So here for y variable it will create two different memory area. One will be for st object and second will be for st1 object, whereas this x variable, right, it will keep only a single copy. That means single copy will share, it will create only one memory area where 10 will store, right? So it will keep a one memory area where 10 will store. So that means static will having only one memory area, where non-static will having a, depend on the object. If it is a multiple object, will create a multiple memory area, right? So that is all about the static concepts. One of the important concepts you should know, right? What is static, like that, right? Next one that we are going to understand, final, right? What is a final? It is also one kind of keyword, right, which is used for, it is a keyword, right, which is used with variables, methods and class. It can be used in all three places. So if I will make it final, f will be small here, okay, it is capital because keywords always in a small letter. Java is a case sensitive, we have to be very careful about it, what we are keeping is small and what we are keeping capital, right? So if you will make it variable, right, final, then what happen, right, like final int of x, right? That means this variable will be look like a constant only. Constant means cannot be modified, right? Like for example, if I will make it one static variable, final variable, like here I want to make it final int of say z equal to 30, right? So here z is a one variable which is a final, right? Later on if I want to modify it, like for example here I want to modify it. What I want to modify? So let me modify after the, because it is a non-static, right? That can be called by the object only. So how does it work? I can simply write st dot z, and what I can keep equal to say like 100. If I will keep it, it will start trying and it will say that not possible, cannot assign a value to a final variable z. So final variable, if I will assign it right once, that cannot be remodify. That is kind of behavior called constant. But if I will want to reinitialize y, right, we can do it like st dot y equal to say 100. Then there will not be any problem here because y is a non-final and z is a final. So final variable cannot be reinitialized, where non-final variable can be reinitialized. So that's why this is called kind of constant, right? That is called constant. So final can be added with the variable, final can be added with the method also, right? If I will add final with the method, right, then what happen? That method cannot be overridden. So now let me write final method, right? If I will make it final method, then what happen, right? It cannot be modify. It cannot be not modify, override. So always remember that one constructor cannot be overridden, right? Same final method also cannot be overridden. We cannot override a final method. Same static that we have covered, right? Static method also cannot be override. So whenever you are thinking, okay, I want to make a one method, that cannot be overridden. Overridden means it will hide the parent body into a child, right? So it will make a one kind of layer on the top of it. That means the body of the parent. Override means what? The method I'm keeping in the parent, the same method should be in the child, right? But body will be the different. The parent body and child body will be the different, right? That means child is going to override to the parent. If child is going to override to the parent, that means it is going to uh, replicate it, right? So final will say that it is behaving like a constant only, right? That means cannot be possible. So you cannot override it. If it is created, that means you have to use it. You cannot override it, right? So final method is the method which cannot be overridden, right? And final variable cannot be modified. Final method cannot be overridden. And final, if I will make a class, that means that cannot be extendable. So the final class cannot be extend. I mean, I can like it can we cannot extend final class. We cannot extends final class. It will give me error. That means final class cannot be a child class. Sorry, final class cannot be a parent class. Final class cannot be parent class, right? That is the one things with the final. So final could be added with the variable. If it is with the variable, that means variable cannot be modified. If it is a method, cannot be overridden. If it is a class, so it is a final method, final class. If you will make it with class, right, that means cannot be inherit. That means final class cannot be parent class, right? If you will keep it, it will be compile time error, right? So this is the main use of final, right? And that is the use of static. Now let's understand what are the use of static and final in overridden, right? So let's come to this point. So I'm making a two method here. So first let me remove this error because it is a final variable, it cannot be overridden. Now let me create a one class here. That could be a test class, or not test class. Let's say it could be a say employee class. Okay, let's say it's an employee, and having a like my employee. There's a two class I have right now, right? My employee. E will be capital here, right? One is a employee and second one is a my employee, right? So employee is having a suppose one method, like two method it is having a like void test, that is a one method, okay, and it is having a one more method like static void say test one. Guys, here we have to understand the concepts actually. Concepts only been asked in an interview, and concepts, with the help of concepts only you can work on the coding, right? So one method I created under an employee, one is a static and second one is a non-static. Now in the my employee class, it is a suppose extends the employee one, right? So here my employee is a parent, sorry, employee is a parent, my employee is a child. So if you want to override it, right, what I can do, I can simply write void test, right? And I can keep at override annotation on the top of it, at override. At the rate of override. Right now, if you want to override that static method, right, then what happen? Like if I will write static or like void test one, we have a two method here, right? One is a test method and second one is a test one method, right? So if you are going to override this test one there, let me keep it. So here I am writing test one, void test one, right? That time if I will keep it at the rate of override, it will not allow that, and it will say like what? See, the method does not override a method from the its superclass because it is a static. The reason is that static will depend on the class, it doesn't depend on the object, right? So that's why cannot be overridden. If you want to keep it, you can keep it, but that will be different method of the class itself. Then we have to remove this overridden. If I will remove this override, then it will work fine. So if you will not write override on the top of it, right, that time it will think this method is not from the parent class, this method is from the child class itself, right? So here it is understanding, okay, test method is from the employee only, that's why we are keeping override. And override means the signature must be the same, like I covered that is the last session, right? Signature means the name of the method, the return value of the method, and the argument of the method, right? That will be the same. So always remember which method cannot be overridden. A static method cannot be override, right? And if I will keep one more method like final method, right? So I'm writing here final void, say like test2, final void test2. Then what happened, right? If I will override that, right, that time it will also give a error to me. So if I will write here a void test2, look like that, right? Then what happened, right? This is also cannot be overridden, right? If I will keep it at override, it will also give me error. And what does it say? See here, it will say that void test2. What is error here? Test2 we have, right? Final void test2, and here we are keeping test2. So it is saying like test2 cannot be overridden. Test2 in overridden employee overridden method is final. So final method also cannot be overridden, right? So in overriding we have to keep in mind what cannot be overridden. Constructor cannot be overridden because name will be the different, right? Or it is depend on the dynamic objects only, right? How to create objects, that also we are going to understand here once, okay? So static method cannot be overridden, final method cannot be overridden, and constructor also cannot be overridden, right? So this time I have to remove these two things here. Only one method can be overridden, that could be test1, which is a non-static, right? Now let me create one more class which is a like test class. So that could be a like employee test. He will be capital employee test. So in the employee test I will keep main method here, right? So what I will do here, I will create object. So as I told you, right, the difference between overloading and inheritance, right? What the difference? Overriding and inheritance. So here I do keep reference of the parent, right? And I will keep object of the child, new my employee, right? That is called dynamic. So that means the object of the child will dynamically pass to the parent reference. So E is a reference here, right? So inside the E it will copy my employee, right? So that my employee will be passed into the E, and here I can directly call E dot test, right? So we have a test method here that can be called directly. One thing also I want to cover it, okay? So that I will cover maybe next session, okay? So this session we have covered what is a final, what is a static, what is the rule of final and static, right, in terms of overriding. So final static cannot be overridden, right? We can directly call from the parent, right? So these are the rule. One more things I want to cover here, that is also one of the important concepts, bit deep concepts which you have to understand. That let's say I'm writing one method here, say like test3, void test3, okay? Try to understand once, okay? I'm making a one method called test3, right? Suppose if I will keep it under the my employee, right? If I will keep it under the, I do not keep under the my employee, right? That time it is a part of employee only, right? So that we can call directly. Or how can call? We can go to the employee test. So here you can say that the test3 method which I created under the employee class, which is a parent, and I did not create that into a my employee, right? So this time I can call the test3 method. Try to understand what I want to explain you, right? Test3 method can be called directly, right? Because it is a part of employee. Now let's say I'm keeping a one method which is a part of child, like void test4, suppose void test4. Test4 method which I created, right, it is not a part of employee, right? So that means that method cannot be called here. So if you will call here E dot test4, right, you can see you are not getting option. If you will write here test4, it will start crying and it will say that test4 cannot be called, right? So test4 cannot be called because here the meaning of this assignment, right, this E, it will say like it will call all the method which is present of the parent class as well as those method which is a part of child and parent, like that only. That means it will call all the method of the parent as well as the overridden method. It cannot be called any method which cannot be like which is not overridden. So test4 method here we are not going to override. So test4 method is only the part of the myEmployee class. Guys, please understand one of the important concepts in terms of interview, in terms of your day-to-day coding activity also, right? Polymorphism is one of the topmost, I can say, important part of object-oriented programming, because next we are going to start abstraction, right? So abstraction will be based on the overriding only. So that time you will understand that how much it is popular and how much it is important. So we have to understand all the scenario of overriding, right? So that is all for today. If you like the video, please subscribe it, and if you have any doubt on it, please put me on the comments. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye bye.